Hello and good afternoon, everyone. This is Naishad Gadani coming to you from Melbourne, and today is our 236th episode of Career Care Package. If I reflect back, 2 years before, I was in India, and I think we first broadcasted it on 25th of March, which is next week. It would be our 2 year anniversary of Career Care Package. And it's been a long and fun and joy ride with all of you as well, and also the amazing guests that we had the opportunity to interview and interact and learn from over a period of time. And we are absolutely delighted to welcome Bill Cowan to talk about networking today. But before we, get to speak to Bill, let's welcome Caroline Brown.
Thanks, Nash. It's been an absolute journey, hasn't it? 2 years, almost to the day that we've been broadcasting live. But it's funny, at the end of each year, we've gone, oh, we need a bit of a break. So I think it's been about 2.5 months since we were on people's screens. So, yeah, really looking forward to having a chat with you today, Bill, about the book and about obviously your huge observations with, a long, long career as an executive and also helping people with career transitions. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Um, did you want to kick off, Nash, or will I?
No, please kick it off.
Yeah, Bill, you've just, well, not just a couple of months ago, released a book. Be fantastic. Building a winning career. There's Nash holding it up. Be fantastic to get an understanding of why that book and why now for you.
Well, the book really is because there's not much help out there, real concrete help particularly to help middle to senior executives if they leave their job or lose their job. How can you sort of understand what you need to do? It's quite daunting for many senior people if they lose their job. They're used to being in charge, and now suddenly they're no one does what they say, and it's very hard to get anything done. You're at the whim of others. So I wrote the book really because I'd worked with 1,000 executives over the years, and I have learned a lot. I've got a lot of stories to tell, good and bad, things that happen that are outstanding, and things that happen that are problematical. So I felt it was good to try to put this into one document, because there are plenty of documents or talks about how do you write your CV, or how do you dress for a meeting, or how do you handle Zoom meetings or whatever. But there's nothing that really looks at the whole pattern of things you need to go through from a strategic point of view, and then gives you practical advice. If you Google, I'm a 45-year-old executive and I've lost my job, you'll get very superficial information. You should meet people, you should go and meet some recruiters. Both are right, but you shouldn't do it before you're ready. And most people don't know how to get ready. That's the problem. And the getting ready part is actually quite challenging.
I suppose one of the things is that people get so busy, especially at executive level, so busy doing in their career, but in terms of like some deep level of reflection about what makes them tick and what next is that the first missing piece that you suggest that people do?
Yes, well, you're right. I mean, the problem is people are so busy when they're in their job, they keep putting off. I say in the introduction, you really should know about this process, because one day you're going to need it. And some of us need it more than once, Yet the peculiar thing is that people put it off. And even retirement is a huge career transition for a professional. And yet they don't plan I don't believe in retirement myself. I believe in a portfolio career, but people do not plan it. I'm working with a couple of senior partners of law firms right now, and they're expecting to retire in a year or so. Well, they're thinking ahead, which to me is very, very sensible. The problem for most people is when they're busy in a role, they've got no time. They can't network. They don't even have time to think. They even buy my book, and then they don't have time to read it.
Well, hopefully they're watching this. So,
Well,
Absolutely.
that's
And uh,
you know,
yeah,
hearing
and
is just,
in Bill, the book title says that a complete guide for to securing and thriving in your ideal senior role. However, the book appeals to all the in hierarchy, all of them, starting from a graduate to someone who is an entry level role to someone who is a mid manager. And I think that's what I've had a look at in a few chapters, and it appeals as someone who is not in a senior role. It still appeals to me that you've made it more kind of attractive to various audience, just not senior. Obviously you have worked with a lot of senior executives, so you're reflecting on their journey, but I'm pretty sure that these ideas are also applicable to everyone, including grads as well, right? So that's a really good thing.
yes. Well, I think it's interesting because when you're writing a book, you need to have an audience in mind. And just like you do, like the Financial Review, the Australian Financial Review is written for the top 200 executives in Australia, but is read by 20 or 30,000 people. So my book, I focused on senior executives, but in fact, spent some time at Melbourne University earlier this week and had about 100 students in the audience, and it's very clear that many of the ideas uh, are very valuable to them. They're just not, schools and university do not teach people how to look for a job,
mm,
uh, and how to network. And if you believe, as I do, that 80% of jobs come through networking, you should do some work on how to network.
mm,
It's not trivial. A lot of people try and they get rebuffed in the first meeting and then they give up. I say you need to meet 50 people. So, and how do you do that? And how do you make progress in each meeting? How do you get them to introduce you to someone else? That's the trick. And how do you prepare yourself so that you're testing ideas, not just having a chat? I don't believe this is a business of having a chat over a coffee. This is a working meeting. You might have a coffee, but this is a working meeting, and I'm
mm,
testing my hypotheses. And how do I set up my hypotheses? That's a big challenge.
mm.
You've got to help people help you. You can't just say, I don't know what I'm doing, and um, I'd like to have a chat. That's not going to work.
Mm. Especially at the senior level as well. I mean, when I've done some work with senior executives, the preparation that goes into some of those meetings they do is quite intense in terms of understanding that person, their position in the organisation, and being quite specific about the questions that they want to ask that person, knowing that their time is very, very valuable as well. So we were going to talk about your approach to networking. So maybe that's a good segue to show some of those slides, Nish, and start to break that down.
Yes. So, do you want to talk about this one, Nash? This
Sure,
is your.
absolutely. Why not? I don't miss a chance to self promote myself. But yeah, so this is a paradox that I think I drew this few months back, and leading up to this talk, I wanted to kind of refresh everyone's memory. And I found this very interesting that usually we work the other way around. As job seekers or career seekers, we see networking very differently to how it should be built. So that's why it's paradoxical in my view that asking for job is the last thing that you would do, but that's the first thing that most of the job seekers, specifically when you're looking for work, that's the first thing that you would do. I take an example of, let's say you're in a barbecue, and your friend introduces you to someone who could potentially help you, and you are not listening to that person's name, but you're listening that there's a job here written somewhere, or there's something that really clicks, and you lose the focus on really having a chat with that person, but rather than jumping into straight away thinking of job, and that really ruins the whole thing. And secondly is that those unintended kind of what you don't say travels faster than what you say, and people can sense that thing, that you are kind of nudging them into helping you to get into a job or introduce you to someone without even forming a kind of background of relationship with them. So that's what this is all about. But just to set up the context, but obviously, Bill, we want to understand from the framework that you talk about in in your book. So
Mm.
I've got this slide for you if you want to
Just
kind
before you
of
do
help
that,
us.
just
Yes.
before you go to that one, just stay on your pyramid there, Nish. Um, this my mantra is seek advice, you'll find a job. Seek a job, and you'll get advice. So it's people don't know how to find you a job. In fact, this is a huge problem in networking. If you say you're looking for a job, people won't introduce you to other people. They don't know who can give you a job. So what you want to do is talk about uh, where you the kind of people you'd like to meet to broaden your network. And you never know. It's a numbers game. This is the problem. It's not an intellectual process. You and I and Caroline could sit down for a week and talk about what would I be doing in 3 years' time, and we would not know. We can't work it out. But we could work out how should I explore, or what kind of questions should I be asking other people to get them to talk about what interests them, and how they, if they're in your shoes, what would they be doing? And and I think actually, why don't we move to the next chart, because it is relevant at this point. I frame the problem into three. You're in the middle. You're the black spot, and there's the A list of people you know who care about you and want to help you, but they don't know how to help you. And it's important to do the homework to work out, well, what makes you special? Where could you add value? How can you contribute? What's likely to be an attractive role for you? And then you need to test it with your A list. In fact, there's even a subset of the A list, which I call the panel, which is really your referees. I like you to meet the referees first. Most people leave it to the end of the process to, would you mind being a referee? I say, I'd like to test my thinking with you, and I'm hoping at some point you might be a referee. But we need to get some validation. Before we start networking, we need to validate our thinking. And a lot of people don't do that. They shoot from the hip. They've got no input from anyone else about what their strengths are, because we should be playing from our strengths. And they don't know how to explain their strengths simply and clearly. If you want to be special, I point out in the book that one thing that makes you special is if you can be very succinct about your strengths. Most people talk too much, take too long. And answering the question, tell me about yourself, most people, if they haven't rehearsed and they're just doing it without thinking about it, they'll take 5 or 10 minutes. I had one person who took half an hour. I think you should be able to do it in 2 minutes. So, because it's a very, very difficult question, what are they really interested in? You don't know. It's an open-ended question, and you can't tell what the person asking that question is interested in. So for me, I explained in the book that there's I call it PEC, passion, experience, and competency. But I think you spend about half a minute on what are you passionate about, what's your experience, and what do other people say makes you special, not what you say. Who cares what you say? It's what other people say. And in fact, in the book, I talk about actually make a conscious effort to find out what other people say makes you special, using an email process that I've set up. So that's you framed the problem for the A list, and what you want them to do is introduce you to people they know who might be able to help you more, because you might say, I'm very interested in, I don't know, pick a topic, retirement villages. Well, it's surprising. If you have 15 or 20 people on your A list, there'll be one of them who knows someone and there could be a lot more than one, who knows a lot about retirement villages. It's just the way the world works. And then what we want to do is have a warm introduction to the B list. We can't make cold calls. Cold calls don't work. So because this is all about trust. And if there's no trust, then I'm not going to invest in you. But if I trust you, Caroline, and you introduce me to someone, I'm going to trust them, and I'm going to try to help them because you've asked me, not because they want help. It's because you've taken the trouble to ask me. So if the A list asks someone on their, someone they know to help me, they'll help me. Very often they'll help me. There are some reasons why they might not. They may think you're looking for a job, and they say, I don't know any jobs, therefore why would I want to meet the person? That's a mistake. We mustn't think, they mustn't presume you are looking for a job. You're looking for advice. And another one could be that they just confused about what you want to do. You haven't been clear enough about what ponds you want to fish in, because I say you should be selecting 3 areas that you want to investigate. You can't just say, I'm going out into the ocean and I'm going to catch a fish. It doesn't work that way. You won't catch any fish. So then the third, oddly enough, the jobs come from the C list. There's actually academic research that supports this, that the people who know you least are most likely to hire you. The people who know you the most are least likely to hire you. They know you too well.
I was about to say, yeah. Just wanted to jump back to a couple of points that you made, Bill, around the hypothesis. So is that, can you dig a bit deeper about what that is, what you're asking people to do there?
It's actually one, maybe the next one or the one after, Naish, that talks about framework for seeking advice. This one, this is the one here, framework for seeking advice. I believe it's very worthwhile for you to talk about what would I like to be doing in 3 to 5 years. And I believe you should aim high. I had an experience when I was 38. I left a consulting firm, and for no particularly good reason, I said I'd like to be a CEO. And oddly enough, someone agreed with that and helped me become a CEO. Now, if I'd said I wanted to become a strategic advisor or something, I probably would have ended up doing that. So and I certainly wouldn't have become a CEO. So when I'm working with people, I like to try to think, well, where are you heading? And then the next layer down, the pathways, how are you going to get there? And what are the possible ways of getting there? Because you may not be able to do it in one jump. It's a bit like getting a hole in one in golf. It doesn't happen very often. But if you said, look, I'd like to be the chief executive in 3 to 5 years, then what pathways might take me there? And then, and you can test this level of thinking with your referees because they know you well enough. They could say, look, you make a great CEO, or you're smoking dope. You're a nice person, but you're never going to be a CEO. You hope they're going to be honest with you because you don't really want to be trying to do something which no one else thinks makes any sense. But where most people can help you, your A, B, and C list is this next section down called Target Sectors and Organizations for Analysis. So what I'm trying to do here is to help people select some sectors where they want to explore. It could be a big idea like financial services, and then you could have banking, insurance, and superannuation as sectors. Or it could be, first sector could be financial services, the second sector could be travel and leisure, and the third sector could be government, a department or something. It's up to you to decide what these sectors are. And then I like to populate the columns with different organizations that are worth exploring.
Mhm.
And if you show this chart to people, it's amazing how often they will say, I know someone. Oh, I didn't realize you're interested in working for Google. I know someone at Google. Would you like me to introduce you? This is what we're trying to do. In the networking, we don't, the more specific we can be about who we want to meet, the better. That's why LinkedIn is a huge asset, by the way. But this is a good discipline all of its own to force you to think about where would I like to explore? Not necessarily where I'd like to work, but where would I like to know? I'd like to know more about these organizations, and how can I find that out?
Mm. You know what I love about that approach, Bill? Sorry, I don't know if you're about to say something, Nesh, but I'll just jump in. Is that it must open people's eyes up, that they stop thinking from where they've come from, because you can get very locked into what you've been doing most recently, and to take some time to just go, what's next? Like, this is a real opportunity for me to explore the many things I could possibly do, and let's like narrow down the focus a bit, but really, you're giving them permission to think a lot more broader. Is that the reaction that you get when you take people through that process?
Yes, it's very valuable for them in that regard. And there are some people who are extremely able, but have never really thought much about where's it all going, you know.
Yeah.
And it's actually a bit of a problem with some middle management females, that they don't really want to take the risk. They're not comfortable sort of stretching and maybe failing. To me, it's not failure. It's just that it didn't work out that way, But the whole name of the game is to generate options, and you never know which one will be right for you. And sometimes you accept a role and it's actually not right for you. You figure that out when you're in there. No matter how much due diligence you do, you can't actually work out what's really going to be like working in that particular operation. But yeah, my goal is to have people thinking about the future. Where are they going? Because most of us, if we look after ourselves, will live to 75 or 80 or more. Now, and we're not going to retire like our grandparents, sit in a rocking chair and then keel over at 65, 66. So I believe you're going to, even if you're leaving a professional firm, for instance, you are probably going to have a portfolio career. You will be doing something constructive with your life. That's my theory. And you need to think about, what is that going to be? It just, you don't normally just get a sort of a light on the road to Damascus that tells you what you're meant to be doing next. You have to think, and you need to test it with other people. Other people will come up with ideas that just never crossed your mind. You'll be simply thrilled. I can almost guarantee that you'll be thrilled with all the ideas that come up.
And the support, I think. We've just got a couple of comments here. So Sarah McKenna, hi Sarah, said, hi Nesh, KB and Bill, listening while I drive and loving the session. Go buy Bill's book. Just pulled over to let you know I'm enjoying the session. So it's lovely to hear. And we've got a question from a LinkedIn user. I'm not sure who it is, but for you, Bill, says, how do you recommend somebody who's an introvert to lead and shine in meetings? And I think that's a really good point, because a lot of people are reluctant to put themselves out there because they feel a bit socially awkward or a bit like an imposter sometimes. So, yeah, if you could speak to...
No, it's a real issue. And I don't know if you've read Amy Cuddy's book and seen her TED Talk, but, in a way it's directed towards people who, fake it, you'll make it. You've got to take some risks. And the risk of failure is, the downside is virtually zero. The funny thing is, and I'm told this is more of a problem with women than men, that they don't want to contribute unless they feel they can make a contribution. Men just dive in and talk, and it drives women mad, of course, in a commercial environment. But the point is that you have to contribute. Amy Cuddy she was a professor at Harvard, and she was trying to work out, why do women at Harvard get lower grades than men? And it turns out it's class participation. You get half your grade where you did on class participation. And if you don't participate, you're not going to get a grade.
Mm.
And it's the problem is that a lot of people don't want to participate unless they feel they've got something of merit or value to contribute. And the difficulty is that quite often, one idea will spark another. You don't actually have to have the solution. You just need to keep the conversation going, and you'll find that you're a contributor. So I think the introverts do have a problem, but in a way, but I think they can say, I'm an introvert. I need to meet more people. It's a bit like this problem of I'm new. I've just arrived in Australia. I don't know anyone. You can actually ask, would you help me? People don't ask for enough help. Most Australians will help you if you ask them. I worked with a woman who came from Central America. She arrived, and it was just a terrible situation, but she was terminated within 1 month of arriving. She knew no one in Australia. But she was able to use this to her advantage by telling people, I don't know anyone. Can you help me meet people? In the end, she was offered 3 very big jobs because she'd met chief executives of some of the biggest companies in Australia. But it was because she was able to ask. A lot of people have got this fear of failure, or not, if I ask, I'll be rejected. I'm saying this is a numbers game. You're going to kiss some frogs. Unfortunately, there are a lot of frogs out there. You kiss a few of them, they don't turn into princes or princesses.
I have a little saying when I talk to people about networking. It's like the worst answer, like if you're doing it via LinkedIn and you're reaching out, the worst answer you'll get is a no answer. Like you'll be ignored. Like that's it. Like, so that's not really, nobody's jumping up and saying, how dare you email me or reach out to me. So, and then I have another saying, which is like, dickheads don't say yes. So the people that say yes are generally in that space where they're quite attuned to wanting to help. So, trying to sort of help people with their confidence around doing it as well.
Yeah, I would say, LinkedIn is particularly powerful when you can find who do you know that knows the individual you want to meet. So you get an introduction rather than cold calling, but you can actually cold call. There's the story of 100 lunches with strangers. Have you heard that? Yeah, well, I think that young woman was successful because she had a target of 100 lunches. It wasn't that people wanted to meet her. They wanted to help her meet her target. So that's one reason why I say I'd like to tell everyone I've got 100. I want to meet 50 people. And I need you to introduce two people to me. Otherwise, I'm not going to meet my target. That's, I think people will respond well when you put it in terms of a goal like that, rather than do you know anyone who might be interesting for me to meet. That's a different kind of problem. And let me think about it. Well, I tell you, as soon as they say, let me think about it, you're a goner. It will not happen. They'll say, I'll call you in a week. I'll let you know. I'll give you some names. If it happens, it's a miracle. What they do is they either forget, or they can't think of anyone, or they worry you're looking for a job. They can't think of anyone who might have a job for you. Whereas if you say, look, I've looked at your LinkedIn, I can see you're connected to X and Y. Would you mind introducing me to X and Y? Then you're in good. It's very hard for them to say, look, I'm sorry. Or they can say, I don't really know them. I only met them in a conference or something. But then you better have Z and A ready. You need a backup. But if everyone you meet on your A list can introduce you to 2 people, that's 30 new people in round figures. And if the B list can introduce you to 1 new person, that's another 30. So you're up to 60 people. And I've had candidates I've worked with who've met 200 people. And if you're thinking of it not as the next job, but the rest of my life, you're trying to build a network for the rest of your life, not just the next job. And if you think of it that way, it's much easier to sort of understand why you're making all this effort. And if you can build an emotional connection, which a lot of people don't do, they think, oh, I've had my meeting, thank God for that, that's all over. What we're trying to do is build an emotional connection, even with recruiters. No, I don't know. In my book, I talk about a recruiter who said 7 out of 10 people that are introduced to me don't thank me for the job, for the meeting. That's absolutely appalling to think that people are so naive, they don't even thank. I think they don't thank the recruiter because they think the recruiter should be thanking them. But they don't understand. The recruiters do not want to meet people off the street or friends of friends, They're trying to fill a job, a position. But the other thing this fellow said, which I thought was really interesting, was even the 3 out of 10 don't really treat this as a relationship building activity. They treat it as a one-off meeting. What they should be trying to do is stay in touch with me, because I won't have a job for, the chances of me having a job that suits them now are negligible. But in the next year or two, something could turn up. So it would be good to stay in touch. So, one of the messages in my book is, how do you stay in touch? How do you build a relationship, not just have an event?
Yeah, makes sense. We've got a question from Bhargavi, and I definitely want to touch on, Bill, your idea of preparing for the meeting, because that's also incredibly important. You've got this person that you wanted to really meet and really build some relationships and everything else, but if you don't prepare well, it's not going to be helpful. So we'll touch on that. We'll just want to take this question that I've got from Bhargavi. She says, I'm working in a male dominated industry where I'm the only girl working with 40 men in my office. I struggle to get along well with them. And this also affect me asking for help in any aspect. At the same time, there is a boy that you get along very well, learning everything that he needed. But how do you face this situation where I don't, it's a very different industry altogether? What do I do to really ask for help in this scenario? Although it's not pertinent to the topic, but if you can kind of also reflect on it, and KB, if you've also got any advice for Bhargavi. I know Bhargavi, she's a migrant, came here, 3-4 years back. Bhargavi, if I, recall, and she's an electrical engineer. I know that too. So yeah, what would you suggest, Bill and KB?
Well, this is it's very personal, very situational, so it's hard to give general advice. But to me, you've got to do this. Preparation is part of it. You can't just sort of say, "Nice to know you. I'd like some help." You've got to have some help on something. What is it that I need help to do? I'm thinking about my career path in the future. I'd love to get your advice on how you handled your career. I'd love to find a role model who could coach me. It's a bit hard if you've got no female role models in your business. This is tough, but that doesn't mean you can't find one. You can ask for help to meet someone who has been in your situation. And you'll be simply amazed. I think most Australians are very helpful. That's my impression. But we've got to phrase the question in the right way. It's seeking advice. It's not how do I get a promotion around here. That's not the right answer. The right question. The right question is more like, I'm thinking about how do I take the next steps in my career, and I'd like to find someone who is a role model for me who could give me some advice on how they manage their career. It's not, does that make any sense?
I think it's a really interesting thing, because I worked in a very male-dominated industry when I started, and there were some places that they were unfriendly, and there are some places where I felt very accepted and didn't have to sort of struggle and prove myself. But I do love what you said, Bill, about finding a role model there, like some other female that's gone through that same process and how that they handled that scenario. So because, you know, also I guess the other thing is that in a place, like there's a culture of a place often, but not everybody, you know, some people just follow the pack in terms of the way that they might behave, but not everybody is like that. So there might be a few people within that organisation that support you being in a male-dominated area and actually take a lot of pride and want to help you as well. So, you know, not to assume that everybody has that attitude as well. So, you know, we all have preconceived ideas about why we're not getting ahead or whether people are going to be helpful or not, but just try to put that aside a little bit and try and, you know, I suppose look to see, like, push yourself out of your comfort zone and reach out a little bit more, even if you don't think that you're going to get a helpful response. There will be some people in there that will actually help you, and I think maybe you've got to push it a little bit. But I do love what you said about having a female role model. I think when I was starting out my career, it never occurred to me to have that, but how much fantastic insight would you get where somebody has successfully navigated the same challenges as well. But my big thing is don't make too many assumptions about who's going to be helpful and who's not, because that will just stop you trying to explore how you're going to work with that. And again,
I remember one ad. I don't know, you know, this ad really talked about this preconceived idea. So it was kind of a social experiment. They had all the bikers and with, you know, guys with tattoo and girls with tattoo, right? And they were sitting in the whole audience, right, in the movie. And there'll be two people will enter the auditorium, and the seat will be right in the middle of this group. And they saw that a lot of people will just turn away. And then there was a couple who came, and he just said, can I sit here, can I sit? And they sit, and everybody just clapped and cheered for them. That's really good, you know, good on you for coming here, this is my name and everything else. And just demonstrated that how much kind of preconceived ideas that we carry about people with such, because we get influenced by everything, like movies to TV serials, to also what we overhear from other people, and everything else. So Bhargavi, I think hopefully that will help you to answer, deal with your situation. But Bill, let's
There's an article in one of the Harvard Business Reviews about just because someone hasn't helped you previously doesn't mean they won't help you in the future, because it's very situational. There may have been some reason they didn't help you before. So don't assume anyone, even if they've somehow proven difficult to deal with, won't help you in the future. If you present the problem in the right way, and if you can ask for help, ask for advice, don't ask for, how do I get promoted around here? This is not a good question to ask. But I'm thinking about my career, and anyone who's in their mid-30s or 40s, if they're not thinking about their career, that you wonder, what are they thinking about? So at some point, it's very natural to want to talk about where's it all lead. And in chapter 10 of my book, I talk about, are you in the right job? I believe that there's three sort of big tests. One is your boss helping you to develop? And if that's not happening, that's a problem. And two is, are you making a contribution? Because if you're just shuffling paper and treading water, that's potentially a big problem. You need to be making a contribution. You need to have some value. And the third thing is the business successful and thriving? If a business is deteriorating, and if your boss is not helping you, and if you're not adding value, there's three strikes. You probably shouldn't be in that job. You should be trying to get out of that place.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So tell us, Bill, about the preparation part of these meetings, and what goes into this, and where do you think people miss out on that?
Well, I think I'm a big fan of talking about achievements. Now, the problem is people get confused about what's an achievement. They think a particular job title is an achievement. It's not. You can be the CEO of Broken Hill Proprietary, but that's not an achievement. It's what impact did you have when you had that job? That's what I'm interested in. And everyone can be a leader and everyone can have impact, in my view. I tell the story in the book about the mailroom attendant who told me he was only a mailroom attendant. And I said, well, that's you're starting from the wrong direction. We've got to figure out what it is you do that people love. And sure enough, when we investigated, people in the office loved him because he was always on time. He was cheery. He helped people. He solved problems. He did what he promised. So he actually had some real strengths, but he was denigrating himself and saying, I'm just a mailroom attendant. So everyone has got strengths. So part of positioning yourself is, what are my strengths? And more importantly, what do other people think my strengths are? You'll see in the book that most people are very poor at describing their own strengths. They're very general, and they think it's or what's an achievement, same kind of idea. They think, I've got this job, that's an achievement. But when I actually ask them, well, what impact have you had? They find it very difficult to articulate that. And I'm always searching for numbers. Don't tell me you improve the culture. Tell me how much you improve the culture. Now that's tricky. I mean, unless you've got engagement scores or something like that, it's very tricky to do. But it has so much more impact. If you say, most people feel this way, it's totally different from saying 56% of people feel this way. You're much more credible if you talk about numbers. So achievements are a big part of sort of positioning yourself going forward. And most people, it's just talking to them, they dream up new achievements. I was just talking to someone today who's been very successful, and she'd forgotten about half a dozen things that I thought were great achievements, including, by the way, building a reputation for something. It's if you can build a reputation, that is a very good achievement, because it's hard to do and it's easy to damage your reputation. So, but if everyone says Naish, is an extraordinarily helpful guy who you go to him whenever you have a problem, and he can be a trusted advisor to you, that's an achievement in my book. So how do you sort of work on your achievements? Well, that's quite a big thing for most people to do, and they mostly use very vague language. I built this business. They don't say how much by, how many years it took them to do it, whether there were huge challenges in achieving that or not. So it's very weak. For someone reading it sees very kind of diffuse language. So part of my job is to sharpen that up. And it's quite interesting that it's quite difficult to do for most people. Not surprisingly, because they're not spending their whole life talking about those kind of things at their work. This is something different. Setting yourself up to network is very different from what you do at work normally.
I love what you said there, and just that valuable exercise of speaking to your referees. To get just because you can't see it yourself. And I think people routinely undersell themselves because they're afraid of overselling themselves. But, finding that right level is the gift that you get from other people, and if 4 or 5 people are saying the same thing about you, there's a confidence boost that you're getting at the same time.
Yeah. And the other fact is that emotional connections are more important than competency. So if you read Amy Cuddy, she says this all started back in the caveman era, when you wouldn't invite someone into your cave unless you trusted them. So and then whether they could light a fire or not was the next step. But the first step is, do I trust this person? And so human beings, we tend to take a view very quickly on whether we trust this person or not.
Mm.
And you're more likely to be trusted if you're very authentic and clear. So, and the problem is, in my book, I talk about this problem. People can't tell you what makes them special, but if you ask them, are you a good driver? Are you a safe driver? 90%, like 90% of them will say they're in the top 10% of safe drivers. So they go from being very vague when you ask them what makes you special to being very specific when you ask them a particular. And of course, it's ridiculous. Even academics have this problem. I give an example in my book of Northeastern University, where they asked the professors, where would you rank yourself as a teacher? And I think it was 75% of them ranked themselves in the top quartile of teachers. So we all do it, Once you asked, are you good at this? Oh yeah, I'm far superior.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, any other tips and tricks for networking, Bill, if you want to leave, because we are coming to an end. So I wanted to find out if there's any other tips, tricks, hacks that you have found are very useful for people in terms of networking.
Well, I think the one thing I would like to say is that how do you make yourself special? Well, I think it's by asking good questions, not by talking about how good you are. So, and asking good questions is actually quite difficult. Quite often I ask people to give me a list of questions you want to ask when you're networking. And they come up with all sorts of random questions. To me, you've got to be very strategic. And same in interviews, by the way. A good interview is a conversation, not where you sit back passively and answer questions. So to start a conversation, you've got to ask some questions. And, I love asking the question, where do you want to take this business over the next 5 years? And how are you going to get there? And how will my job help you get there? That kind of big question. Because then if they can't answer it, that's a big problem to begin with. If they can answer it, then it usually leads to, here are the kind of challenges we face. Because you're trying to find out what do I have to do to be successful? And that, if you can't understand, I've got a particular situation right this today where the chief executive can't explain the board chairman can't explain what the chief executive needs to do to be successful. This is appalling. No. So my question is, do you want to work for this place? This doesn't sound like a good place to work for me. If the chairman doesn't know what the purpose of the organization is and how they're going to measure performance, that's not good. The other point I would like to make is LinkedIn is a huge asset, and most people don't use it well enough. But you should be trying to have at least 500 connections on LinkedIn, and you should always check. If you're going to meet someone, you should always check their background on LinkedIn and try to find where will you have an emotional connection. And we had a situation with one of my candidates who was speaking to someone in Singapore who all we could tell was he had a Sri Lankan name. And so we decided that he probably loved cricket if he was Sri Lankan and probably knew the test results, particularly if they'd beaten Australia, for argument's sake. So my candidate knew nothing about cricket, but they swatted up on all the results for the last 5 years and started the conversation off talking about cricket. So to a very warm conversation. Whereas if they just sat back and said, please ask me the first question, it would have been a very different setup, outcome, I think.
I love what you said about making that emotional connection. And I think, because then you're building that trust, aren't you? Like letting
Precisely.
you coming into the cave and you know, people sense when people are interested in them and do want to make that connection as well. So, yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic.
well, what's interesting is you're selling an intangible. Now, if you read the books on selling intangibles, it's not like buying a cup of coffee. You can tell immediately, is the coffee okay or not? But you are selling the promise of future value. If I join you, I will somehow make your life better and easier and the business more successful. How do you do that? Well, it's your point about trust. You know, the person's got to, in the end, has got to trust you. If they don't trust you, that to me is the first thing that they're looking for. Do I trust you? Then can you do the job? But the weird thing is that most job descriptions don't describe the job. They're some shop window, you know, they're the Christmas window in the shop.
Right.
They don't tell you about the back room, which is chaotic, or the systems which don't work, or the customers who are upset. And then the next thing is, can I work with you? Do you fit? Do I want to come to work with you each day or 3 days a week, whatever we're doing these days? And then, are you enthusiastic? My problem is I don't want you to be too enthusiastic. I want you to be enthusiastic at a level, say, yeah, I'd love to, this job looks great, but I need to understand more detail. What is it I need to do to be successful in this job? And then finally, oddly enough, they want to look good when they hire you. So we need the hiring team to feel like they made a great decision and they get a pat on the back. Because if they make a bad decision, if you don't work out, their reputation is in jeopardy.
Excellent. All right, Bill, thank you very much for coming along. KB, anything you want to add to this?
No, I just encourage everyone to go and buy Bill's book because there's a really refreshing and expansive take on networking that I think everybody needs a reminder because we have such assumptions about what it is. And I think the strategic approach that you've given people is really, really valuable in that. And somebody on LinkedIn has already asked to work with you there. So Naisha's just put up a note for that. So thank you so much for joining us, Bill. It's been absolutely insightful to have you on the show.
Great. Well, it's very nice to sort of have this opportunity. Thank you for giving my book a plug. If they want to go to my website, which is www.buildingawinningcareer.com, I'll send a signed copy. And oddly enough, it's less expensive than buying it. For some reason, it's meant to sell at $39.95. But it's actually selling at $60 on some of the bookseller sites. So I don't know whether that means there's big demand or they've just
like this is gold. This is gold.
But it's easy to buy through my website, and I'll actually sign it for them. Fantastic. And I hope they enjoy it. The interesting thing to me is that most people who read it are recommending it to other people. So that's a fairly good sign, I think.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Before we finish, please make sure that you continue to shower your blessings in form of subscribing our YouTube channel if you haven't done that, so that we are around 400 subscribers now, KB?
464 last time. I look every
Wow, that's right. That's
so the first thing I do on my phone is
464.
like, what do we got? So
464. We are inching towards
one a
1,000,
day.
and that's where we start to make a lot of money out of YouTube. But thank you again for joining us, and please, join us next Friday, 12 p.m. We don't know who's going to be there, but someone amazing will be there with us, and we will be talking about all things career. So do join us. Until then, have a great weekend, and also happy Holi to all those subcontinental listeners that are going to play Festival of Color today. So have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend, everyone. We'll see you on next Friday. Bye for
Bye,
now.
everyone.
Bye.
See you later.